Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. We are the premier business radio program. I'm your host, Mike King. I appreciate you being here with me. This is part of the Mike King Biz Radio Network, which is ESPN Richmond 106.1, The Choice 105.3, as well as International Business Growth Radio. You can follow me on social platforms on the Mic with Mike RVA, as well as Mike King Biz. So we are the premier business radio program in the area. Well, the only one broadcasting daily here, bringing the game changers to you. Look who we got. We got award-winning friend of the program, Jack Berry, Richmond Region Tourism. Welcome back to the program, sir.
Good morning, Mike.
Alrighty, so not the last time I saw you, but a little bit ago, you were being feted for being the person in tourism for 30 years.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Alrighty, so tell folks who you are and what you do.
So I'm Jack Berry. I'm with Richmond Region Tourism. And simply stated, our mission is putting heads in beds. So, again, we were just talking before the program that we're not as known as a tourist destination like Las Vegas or in Orlando, but through the pandemic, tourism became a very, very important ingredient and sustained extremely well during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, we're at record levels even before the pandemic, when travel in 2019 was an all-time record. Worldwide, we've now exceeded 2019 in travel expenditures and tourists and hotel occupancy.
Because a lot of times the end user, the resident, doesn't realize what the power of tourism dollars does to the tax base and all of that. We don't realize the impact, the economic impact that it has.
Correct. So again, is that one thing about our destination is we're very fortunate because we have the four strong pillars of travel. And when the economy turns down, we're not dependent upon one particular market. So in other words, the four pillars are family and friends, which is the number one reason people travel. It's probably your listeners, if they've done travel in the last 12 months, I'm sure it was family and friends related. One is meetings, conventions, and sports tourism. And sports tourism is really just on fire here. One is business travel, and that nationwide, worldwide, is still suffering to come back. And then leisure travel. Leisure travel, we've become really, and this was before the pandemic, quite the hip destination to visit. We're in the same shoulder to shoulder with Nashville, Austin, Texas, and Charleston. And every time I give this, these speeches, people are shocked because they're local here. They don't realize that on every weekend, we sell out of over 18,000 hotel rooms. If you take anything out of my message this morning, once your child becomes engaged, book the hotel rooms, no matter what, because you're not going to find the hotel rooms. Every single weekend, this past weekend, we had a few sporting events. So Virginia Union did an NCAA, they were awarded an NCAA game on Saturday, and we had to find rooms. It took us 5 hotels to find enough rooms to accommodate the football teams. We're that popular. We've become quite the destination. And a lot of that's been driven by the food scene.
So, and you had talked about this in the past. It's in a lot of the things that had happened were intentional because you know that you wanted to be up there with those other sort of sexy destination towns. But the people who live here don't really realize all the things it has to offer because, as you talked about before, when a person comes to Richmond, they don't recognize that they're going to Henrico and they're staying in Chesterfield and they're coming into Richmond City. They're just coming to Richmond.
So for a great example, if you talk to like any person who's visited Richmond, particularly from the Northeast or Midwest, and they said, oh yes, we were there in Richmond because our child played in the Jefferson Cup with the Striker Soccer in March. Well, truth be told, the person flew from Chicago, they took a flight, they landed in Henrico, where the airport is, they stayed in a hotel in Hanover, and their fields were down in Chesterfield, and then they went shopping out either in Henrico or Chesterfield Town Center. So they go back to Chicago, and they say, where have you been? Well, they just say, we've been to Richmond. And the beauty with our Central Virginia is that the jurisdictions realize that it's Richmond region, and they have no problem because the tourist doesn't understand borders. In other words, when they come to play in a soccer tournament, you don't, all you know is you got to be at this soccer field. You don't know what jurisdiction it is. You don't really care what it's in, but you are at a hotel. You got to get to the soccer. You got to have eat for the team, and so then you got to fly back. Again, it's very multi-jurisdictional, but again, it has just been tremendous. And again, it's just mind-boggling that we're at record levels, even though we're still in the middle of this pandemic, and business travel hasn't even returned yet.
On the mic, Mike Jack Barry, Richmond Region Tourism here with us. Let's talk about the jurisdictions, because you guys, there's 7 of them, correct?
Yes.
Run down who the 7 are.
Okay, it's Chesterfield, Hanover, Henrico, Richmond, New Kent, Colonial Heights, Ashland as well. I think that's 7. Let's see. Ashland, oh God, that's out. Ashland, Colonial Heights, New Kent, yes. Chesterfield, Hanover, Henrico, and the city of Richmond.
Were they all coming together at the same time, or did certain ones come in after the fact?
So in 1983, it was the big 3 with the city and Chesterfield and Henrico. And then over the last 40 years, we gained Hanover, and then New Kent came along, Colonial Heights came along, and Ashland came along most recently as well.
Could another jurisdiction say, "Hey, I want to jump in on this as well"?
Sure.
I mean, you can.
Oh yeah, it's a little bit of bureaucracy to do so, but you've got Goochland, you've got Charles City, you've got Powhatan. They're still in Central Virginia, and again, all of them have great tourism assets, but there's the funding formulas, there's hotel needs, so there's kind of a little bit of a process for it. We could not absorb Williamsburg, but we can absorb pretty much everybody but.
There you go. On the mic, Jack Barry is here. So, Jack, you came with the glossy. The fine folks that put out some. You always have some great news. Let's talk about the impact of tourism.
So the economic impact is that Virginia Tourism reports to the U.S. Travel about the economic impact is for each jurisdiction in Virginia. And so these are not our numbers, but in 2021, it's always a year behind, it was $2.9 billion spent in those 7 jurisdictions that I just listed.
Oh.
And it's interesting, Henrico had $1.4 billion spent. And a big factoid is that the reason Henrico has such a tremendous economic impact is because they have 50% of the hotel inventory in Central Virginia. So in other words, you've got a huge cluster of hotels out at the airport, you have it at Glenside, and you have it in the West End as well. So they have the most hotels, and they're 5th in the state. I mean, 5th out of 135 jurisdictions. They rank up with Arlington, Fairfax are always like 1 and 2. Virginia Beach is number 4, but Henrico's number 5.
With the number of hotels.
Because they have so many hotel rooms, that's why they have such a huge economic impact. So of the 2.9 billion, 1.4 billion is Henrico County.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, the funny thing is, so actually Chesterfield County has more hotel rooms than the city of Richmond. So everybody assumes because the city has the larger hotels, but they don't have the quantity of the hotels numbers. And so, and just to give you an example, I mean, this is what happens every single weekend. A jurisdiction will host, let's say, like a soccer tournament. And the soccer tournament takes place down in Chesterfield County, but will also overflow to City Fields and Henrico Fields. However, Chesterfield County does not have enough hotel rooms to accommodate that soccer tournament. So they have to overflow into Richmond, into the city, and into Hanover. And as a matter of fact, speaking of sports tourism, Henrico's building a $50 million convocation sports facility, a multi-purpose facility, and that's up near Hanover. So when they come to play basketball or volleyball at this new complex that'll be open in a year from now, they'll be staying at hotels all throughout the region. But again, get the rooms soon because weekends are extremely busy.
And I think that people don't realize that right there. And we've had this conversation over the years, especially. You guys are we back to pre-pandemic numbers as far as hotel stays and activity for tourism?
So what happened, and we were just talking about the economy out before the show, and when the banks collapsed in 2008, it was September. It took us 5 years to get back because at that time, '07 and '08 were record levels on travel and tourism. So it took us 5 years. So in 2019, worldwide, every jurisdiction, every country had a record tourism. As a matter of fact, I remember Venice, Italy, was saying we have too much tourism, and some cities in the United States were saying we have too many tourists. Well, when the pandemic hit on March 13th, 2020, all travel stopped worldwide. And I'm thinking, how many years will it take us to recover to get back to record levels where we were in 2019? So with a pandemic, is uncharted course. No one knew what to do. It took us 18 months, less than 2 years, to get not only back to where we were, but to exceed where we were in 2019. And remember those 4 pillars that I mentioned? Even business travel has not returned. So once business travel comes back, we'll even be in higher stratosphere on records.
So you had said that Northern Virginia has the business travel.
Correct.
And that suffered.
And so they haven't come back yet, and their government travel and business travel have not returned. And actually, it's a funny thing. So I think for all my whole 30 years, Arlington has always been like number one. And now they're not. I think Fairfax took over and they're coming back. But until business travel, as of course, with Zoom meetings, it's kind of a new. I remember the mega trends back in the 1970s said we're going to do virtual meetings, and it was a great idea. It was top 10 of those mega trends. It never happened. But during the pandemic, they really perfected how to do Zoom meetings and all those type of meetings. And so it'll be a new business model coming out of the pandemic. People will still travel for business, but not to the extent that they did. But then the other part is we find is kind of the new rage is people combining business travel with pleasure. So that if you're going to take a business travel, you might as well take a long weekend. So we've had kind of a bump in that kind of business as well. And then also in the Richmond region, our attractions have just exploded because the leisure traveler has just found we have over 80 attractions from King's Dominion down to Henricus Historical Park, and that's all these museums, all these galleries, all these things to do. And Washington, D.C. is our biggest feeder market, and New York is catching up to them, but we have a tremendous weekend visitation of Washington visitors.
I remember back when the pandemic hit and we were sitting here and you were talking about how we were going to navigate that. Some other jurisdictions were ready to go, full throttle. And you were saying, let's be measured.
Yes.
And I guess it worked out, Jack. You kind of hit the nail on the head right there. Explain why everyone thought, not everyone, but a lot of people think, let's go all out to get folks back here. You were saying, let's be measured, and the proof is in the results.
So, it was the kind of the hangover from 2008. And yes, we have these 4 pillars of travel, and they really insulated us well in 2009, 10, and 11, and 12. But it took us all those years to get back to 2013. And so we kind of had a little bit of a business case back then. But with the pandemic, the listening audience can relate to this, is that, we'd always take one step forward and like 2 back, is that all of a sudden it seems like the COVID was kind of under control, and then you had the Omicron came up, and then you had the wave of the Delta, and then you had the wave of the high gas prices. So it always seems like as we kind of started to get out of this thing, we were set backwards. And so, knock on wood, I think, we've hopefully seen the last of this, and it seems to be under control because you don't see masks much anymore. People are socializing. And the other thing is, the events that we've had at conventions are back to where the attendance is, or even better. So the attendance had dropped off in the last 12 months, but now that's returned. We just had 3 major conventions back to back to back at the convention center with Virginia Association of Counties, with Virginia Music Educators, with Virginia Junior Classic League, which is going on today. So like 7 days, 3 different conventions, all at full capacity.
So I see Doreen is out there and your folks are out there. When we talked to Jennifer Wayfield at the Greater Richmond Partnership, they talked about the cycle of closing deals. And I remember when we talked to you guys before, sometimes from conversation to, heads in beds might be a couple years.
Oh, yes.
Has that gotten any shorter now because of technology, or are we still the time the conversation till the folks are here?
I would say, actually, I don't think it's changed much. I'm working on a couple of conventions now for 2023. Doreen's working on ones for 2025, 26. So there are a lot of short-term conventions, but there are a lot of long-term. So it's just what we were doing in 2019. That hasn't changed all that much. But the interesting thing is that our popularity has really made our selling easier on conventions. Whereas before, and again, I know everybody knows pretty much this, but we have to really be top of mind when you talk about Richmond, because we go to 50 trade shows a year.
And we've had the conversation. Richmond where?
Richmond where? So you're sitting next to Chicago, and how many Chicagos do you know? Well, just one. How many Salt Lake Cities do you know? How many New Orleans do you know? Well, for Richmond, I grew up in Chicago, and I was thinking when you talk about Richmond, Indiana, I moved to LA, and then was Richmond, California. If you fly to Vancouver, you fly into Richmond, but there's 105 Richmonds in the world. And so our job is to make it top of mind when you're talking about Richmond, Virginia. And as I was just saying, that for conventions, like we've had the most popularity, and what also drives this are local people who are inviting their association, their church, their hobby to host their convention here, and that's what a secret of our success is. That's why we're having so many more conventions coming, because if you listening to this today want to bring a convention, you can contact me directly. It's Jack Berry, and it's visitrichmondva.com is our website. My personal number is 804-539-9004, and we'd be love to host your convention. But every time we go to win a convention, it's because there's a local cheerleader who's led that charge. That's
a program that you guys, isn't it? I remember Tamara when we went through the tourism program. You guys talked about that they're champions for bringing.
Very good. Yes.
See, that's well,
they're the champion program, and so we recognize them every March with a lunch or a breakfast. Last time we did this, we had 29 locals that we recognized for bringing, and Jennifer Wakefield was one of those too. She brought her economic development folk here, and they were having their convention too.
Alrighty, Jack, so it's Mike King. Jack Berry is here with us. So, Jack, what are some of the things that folks need to know that's happening that they would find new and exciting with tourism?
Okay, so go to our website, visit richmondva.com. Our calendar of events is the most popular hit. With the holidays coming in, we want you to invite your family and friends to visit here. Don't you all go out visiting them, bring them here. And there is so much going on. If I started naming them, I would forget somebody. But
somebody would be upset.
Somebody's going to be upset. Yeah. But if you look at every single attraction, they've got some kind of a holiday feature. There's so much to do in the region, and the calendar will tell you what's going on each particular weekend. But there is and it's preaching to the choir here. Every weekend we have so many different festivals, and food festivals, and arts festivals, and cultural festivals, not to mention the attractions. So we're the place to bring family and friends over the holiday season, and we look forward to hosting all your people.
So Mike is here, Jack is here. All right, so Jack, I'm not going to call it the scuttlebutt on the street, but it's kind of questioning. So I saw a while back, everyone knows it's RVA. And all of a sudden, I see Richmond making a point that says, hey, we're kind of like that R in the RVA. Is that correct? That they're letting people know?
No, it's the whole region. The beauty is, there are citizens, I'm not going to mention any, but they live in a jurisdiction, and they don't understand why they don't vote for the mayor. like, in other words, they're living in the counties, and when the election comes up for the mayor of the city, they don't understand it. So they don't know the geography for that. So with the RVA, it's just been adopted regionally. We always say Richmond region because, again, we've got 7 jurisdictions in central Virginia. But again, the RVA, everybody's very proud of that. And it was the other Jack Berry and Lisa Sims at Venture Richmond that launched that whole program. And it's been just, like they don't advertise it. It's just kind of like spontaneous. But you see those bumper stickers. If you go to airports, you see them on luggage. You see them just everywhere. And you also see flying squirrels paraphernalia. Like all of a sudden a celebrity will have a flying squirrels on an interview. And that's that. And I just saw we have a beer trail baseball cap that if you go to 5 breweries and get passport stamp for the beer, you will get a beer baseball cap. And I've seen that in just different markets.
So what that helps is differentiate you from the other Richmonds because it's RVA.
That's correct.
Was that intentional?
So, well, the beauty was, this goes way back. We used to have Historic Richmond Region Easy to Love, and that was kind of a 9 organizations putting that together, but we didn't have money to sustain that. And so when Venture Richmond launched this, maybe 5-10 years ago, it caught on like fire, and they produced if you need the bumper sticker, you can get it from Venture Richmond, but it's been a huge success as a case study in marketing and branding, and they've done a magnificent job with that.
So we were up in State College, home of Penn, so shout out to all the Penn Staters out there. Mm-hmm. And it's a crazy environment. It's a college town. So we came here when Richmond and VCU were in the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
This town rivaled that right there. There was an energy, and we went away, and a year later we moved here.
Oh, good.
Because there was that energy that you had right then. It's something that draws people in. And so when you look at the tourism aspect, you guys pop up on a whole bunch of lists.
Yes. On
some really cool lists. When did it start to be like, okay, we're on a list, and all of a sudden, what's the last list that you popped up on that you guys are like, yeah, we did that one?
Okay, so, well, one of my favorites was, it was January, February of 2020. And the New York Times came out with this is right before the pandemic, with the top 52 destinations in the world to visit.
And the world's a big place.
And the world's a big place. And 52 destinations, and Richmond was 39. Paris was 31. So we were 7 cities off of Paris as being one of the coolest cities in the world to visit. And now the accolades, they just don't stop. Bon Appetit, had, names our restaurants the best. We're up for James Beers Awards at our restaurants. MSN, here's another good one. So when the price of gas started to rise and people were afraid that, okay, so now travel is going to take a hit. Well, MSN came up with a statistic of the coolest cities within a tank's drive of gas. And they named 17 cities, and Richmond was number 2 on the list. So that for a tank of gas, because half the population of the United States is within a day's drive.
Yes.
But for a tank of gas, that for DC, you can come back and forth on half a tank, and that's our best feeder market. So that was just recent that MSN said that's one of us. For holiday, Southern Living just said we're like the top 5 destinations for that. In cool cities, we're in the top 10 for cool cities. And this compares us with Charleston, with Savannah. And again, we're just like up in Austin, Texas too. So we're just like all those accolades. We've been the repository of those accolades, and I believe it's now 17 pages long of accolades that we just kind of accumulate.
Wow. DC is a feeder, and New York as well. Mm-hmm. When you find out those, do you start to market to those? You're shaking your head. Yes, of course, yes, we do.
Well, so And again, it's social media. I mean, social media and it's web, and it's kind of the virtual advertising. But when MSN did this, we launched a campaign that said on a half a tank, on a full, we're a destination of a full tank of gas, and we played it in Raleigh, in Washington, Baltimore, and Philly, and New York, I believe, as well. And so now, these are a couple of great campaigns that we've got going right now. So during the pandemic, a lot of people adopted pets, particularly dogs. And so we just came out with a campaign, is that we are a pet-friendly destination. So if you go on my website, we have a video that's narrated by a cat. I'm kind of blowing the punchline here, but the cat narrates it and it shows you all the dog-friendly pieces of Richmond region to visit. And so that's a campaign that's been very successful of bringing pets, and actually you see dogs kind of everywhere now, but these are kind of like pandemic dogs that people now have dogs and like they're with them. And then the other one we just launched this week, which is a really great idea, is it is a senior ditch day. So back when we were back in high school and college.
I saw that.
So
cool thing for seniors to do.
Right. So what we were doing back when we were in school, we had a senior ditch day and we'd do things. Now we're saying we want a senior ditch day for seniors to come here and do all these cool things. So it's a new senior ditch day campaign that we're launching like this week.
There you go, Jack Berry here. Jack, so when I found out that, being from Philadelphia, when I found out there was another Philadelphia, it was just like traumatizing. I couldn't believe it. Like, there is another one?
Where is it?
Mississippi.
No.
That's what I said. Come on, hi. Philadelphia, Mississippi?
First I've heard of it.
Well, I couldn't believe it.
That's
so,
funny.
when people talk about, and I remember all your folks are always just like, it's Richmond, VA. It's Richmond, Virginia, because if not, well, Jack, it's always great. One last time, how can people find you guys out there?
So the website, of course, with these videos, just look at your dog video. It's visitrichmondva.com. Also, the calendar events is there. All of the other videos on beer, restaurants, things to do. And actually, there's just a ton of videos on it that we do a great job with those too. So, but thank you, Mike.
Sports tourism, the equality things that you guys have going on, openness, inclusiveness.
Yes.
Richmond has it going on.
We've always had it going on. I mean, it's kind of trendy now. We've done it for decades.
There you go. Jack Berg on the mic with Mike. We got to run. Alrighty, folks, you can find us on the mic with Mike, ESPN Richmond. That's where we are. We got to run. Take care now. Thanks. Now. Take care.